In today's episode of Today in World War II, March 31st, the German surface raider Atlantis leaves on a cruise that would go for well over a year and sinking a lot of Allied ships. The very first British escapee of World War II made it to Switzerland on this date. The Italian submarine takes out a German, or excuse me, a Royal Navy cruiser. The Soviets are defeated. Excuse me, not the Soviets. The Germans are defeated by the Soviets on the Kuban Peninsula, and Germans' forces are withdrawing from the Netherlands. Let's get started. Okay, so on March 31st, 1940, the surface raider Atlantis left the Wadden Sea and began the longest warship cruise of World War II. It was out in the open sea 622 days. No repairs, no replenishments, and that mother effer in that period of time sank 22 ships. And finally, it was sunk on November 22nd, 1944. If you remember, we chronicled this in this video series. If you want to know more about that, go back to the Today in World War II episode with November 22nd. You can learn all about that. These surface raiders were brilliant. They did an amazing job in the first couple of years of the war, and the Royal Navy just was not prepared for it. We see, though, is that as the Royal Navy got more sophisticated. The Canadians got more ships out there. The Americans gave them more destroyers, and then came in as well. It was just again attrition. And in World War II, logistics and attrition is always should be kept in your mind because that's really why people, armies win, navies win, and other countries don't, right? And so I have to roll my eyes a little bit about the World War II nerds that are so fixated on the generals and the admirals about how wonderful they were. Like especially, I mean, there's this whole cult of Rommel and von Manstein and Guderian, and I just shake my head because yeah, it's all well and good, but they lost. And why did they lose? They lost because they didn't have the logistics. That's why they lost. That's in World War II, that's the big thing. On March 31st, 1941, the very first successful home run escape by a British serviceman happened when British Army Dental Corps Private Co. arrived in Switzerland. He escaped from his POW camp and made it to Switzerland, and good for him. I do find it rather ironic that it's a dental corps soldier. It wasn't like he were a SAS, soldier or I don't know, a pilot. It was a dental corps guy. Good for him, though. I mean, you know what? I think that I'm not gonna make a dentist joke. Okay, I'm not gonna do it. But I remember the Seinfeld episode, where I don't want to be labeled as an anti-dentite, so I'll just keep it at that. But good for him. In fact, you know, full disclosure, I did not know until I started putting this chronicle together about Private Co and his dental exploits and his escape. So that's gonna be on my task to look him up and read more about what happened. So I'm encouraged to do so as well because those escape stories are fascinating. On March 31st, 1941, an Italian submarine Ambra sank the British cruiser Bonaventure about 125 miles southwest of Greece, Crete. And the cruiser was on convoy duty. It was escorting an Allied convoy from Greece to Alexandria at the time. And an Italian submarine broke through the escort ring, penetrated it and put a couple torpedoes into the cruiser and it sunk. So about 138 sailors were killed, 310 survived. And I just want to make a note here. I do tend to make fun of the Italian army, and I realized they were not motivated. They did not want to be willing participants in Mussolini's drive to revive the Italian, or excuse me, the Roman Empire. I get that. I don't blame them. But the Italian Navy fought hard. Their submarines fought hard, their surface vessels, they were outclassed by the Brits, but it wasn't because of lack of trying. The, all honor And props to the Italian Navy. They did fight, and this was a good score for them. Taking, a submarine, anytime a submarine can take out a cruiser, that's a big deal. On March 31st, 1943, Soviet troops defeated the German 17th Army in the Kuban Peninsula, and this was a little bit north of Novorossiysk. It's on the coast of the Black Sea in southern Russia. I will say that if we look at the timeline, and on the Eastern Front, each year has its benchmark. And so in 1941, the benchmark was Moscow. They needed to take Moscow in 41 and they didn't do it. And that lost the war for them for all intents and purposes. In 1942, the culminating battle was Stalingrad, which the Germans did not win. We sensing a theme here. Well, in 1943, everything is building up to Kursk. So Kursk is the last major battle on the Eastern Front where it was fought on relatively equal terms. Okay. And we know what happens there. Now, that course is going to happen later in the summer. So right now we're on March 31st. So we have April, May, June. So we got about 3 months until Kursk happens. So the fact that leading up to this major battle, an entire German army was defeated in southern Russia, that certainly did not bode well for the Germans at Kursk, and we'll see that coming very soon. And finally, on March 31st, 1945, we're getting, like I said, to the end game here, about 1 full month left of the war. The German forces finally began to withdraw from the Netherlands. And I find it ironic that in September of 1944, in General Montgomery's Operation Market Garden, Holland was to have been liberated, in the fall of 44. And they were able to get maybe half of Holland liberated, but then it became a stalemate because let's face it, marshy Netherlands was not really a great place to conduct a major offensive. I mean, hindsight's 2020, but Market Garden was a ludicrous bundle, and shame on Eisenhower for approving that because, like I said, I'm just some guy, and I can tell that if you want to do a sweep your army into the Ruhr and into the industrial heart of your enemy, you don't want to rely on bridges, and you have no way to flank because everything's underwater. Holland is underwater for the most part, below the sea level, right? Well, anyway, hindsight's 2020, as I said, right? But the Dutch people under occupation until March 31st, 1945, they suffered. That winter was a horrible winter. There were people who were dying of starvation. If you look at some of the pictures of the Dutch after the war, they look every bit as skeleton-y as a lot of the other places like concentration camp victims. What can I say? Or the German, or the Allied POWs, the Japanese, they were just walking skeletons. Not all of them, but a lot of them were. So they suffered a lot. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. I appreciate it, and I will see you next tomorrow.